since we launched our beta on February 20th, we have accrued over $357,000 in earned media value. The most complicated, complex UTMs on the planet, it wasn't trackable, and that was the main issue. I've seen people who had zero LinkedIn presence before joining the employee advocacy program, and now they're posting a couple times a week. Their posts are getting great engagement. That really gave me the framework to say, I could use this for employee advocacy.
Welcome back to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. I'm your host, Lewis Gray. I'm joined today by my co-host, Elliot Elsley, and Aptean's Laura McGranahan. Laura launched Aptean's employee advocacy program just 2 months ago, but it already boasts over 500 active users and has generated over $350,000 in earned media value. This is a truly brilliant story and a blueprint to follow. You're going to hear about how Laura secured exec sponsorship, how she built buzz around the program, how she calculates ROI, and how she's already using AI agents to scale content creation for advocacy. There's so much to this episode that it's near impossible to summarize, so I hope you'll stick around. Let's get into the chat. Okay, so Laura, first things first, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so excited to dive into this. But before we get stuck into things, can you just give our listeners a little bit of background on your experience and your current role as well?
Sure. So my name is Laura McGranahan, and I have worked in social media for a little over 10 years. I've done in-house. I was agency side for 7 years. And then in July of last year, I joined Aptean, which is based out of a suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. So they're a global software company, and their main focus is helping industries work smarter and more efficiently. And at the heart of that is a lot of AI-powered intelligence and capability. So App Central is our proprietary platform that acts like an AI brain for businesses. So there's a lot of agentic AI and really just a lot of incredible technology and power that goes into helping our clients be the best they can be worldwide.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I mean, we've got so much to cover here because we are talking about what is really a 2 to 3 month journey currently, and yet the success and things that you've implemented and done to get to this point is quite the story. So I think the best place to start is right at the very beginning. So if you can cast your mind back to, I think it was December you mentioned previously, but I'm sure the idea came about before then. But at what point did it become clear that employee advocacy needed to be part of the social strategy and not just a nice to have for your Aptean?
I started, July of 2025 and really hit the ground running. There was a lot of brand evolution that had been happening over the past few years. And when I came in, I knew as soon as I was hired, one of the priorities was going to be to find a new social media scheduling suite. So as I started evaluating, different companies, some I had familiarity with, some that I hadn't used before, it was pretty clear early on that employee advocacy was going to be something that we needed to be able to have as part of that scheduling suite. So not only the ability to schedule and have comprehensive reporting for our posts, but also a way to enable our employees to amplify that content. So the lucky part for me is that was already kind of in the minds of our marketing leadership team and our executive team. They already knew that was something we were looking for. And then my role was to figure out what's the best fit for Aptean and how do we implement it as quickly as possible. And prior to, some of these conversations around employee advocacy, it was all done organically. So when I first came in, it was a lot of me writing something, putting it into, like a SharePoint or a Teams or sending emails. It was really high touch. It was so manual, and we couldn't track any of it. Even with the most complicated, complex UTMs on the planet, it wasn't trackable, and that was the main issue. So thankfully, my battle, I didn't have a battle convincing anyone to go for employee advocacy that had already been recognized as something we needed to prioritize.
And I think what's really stood out to me with everything that I know about your employee advocacy program and your journey thus far is everything that you did in the lead up to the launch. So I really wanted to focus on that to begin with, if we can. So Before the launch, what did you decide had to be in place to give the program the best chance of success?
So I think the key to launching an employee advocacy program, a successful employee advocacy program, is to make it as easy as possible from day one for your advocates to get in there, have exactly what they need, remove any possible barrier or restriction. They need to be able to log in and go immediately. So, as part of my evaluations for our scheduling suite and our employee advocacy tool, I think I made my final selection around October. That went through some internal reviews, and then we were live with our new tools in December. So we had bundled them together with our suite and our employee advocacy tool. So we had access from day one once the ink on the contract dried. So the kind of pressure I felt was we're paying for this tool. We need to start using it as quickly as possible. We don't want to just be throwing money away. Can't do that. So that was, I think, very late December. We went live with it. And then I spent most of January head down researching as much as I could. So listening to podcasts like this one and reading as many blogs and best practices as I could. I also went to LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn and said, if you've ever used an employee advocacy tool, if you've ever built an employee advocacy program, I need to talk to you. I need to know as much as you're willing to share. And then I also put some feelers out internally. I knew there were some colleagues of mine who'd worked at previous companies, had come through acquisitions who had used employee advocacy tools. So being able to get their take on what worked for you, what did you like, what didn't you like, that kind of started all the wheels turning as I was making a mental map of what I wanted the program for Aptean to look like. So from there, kind of all of January and accumulating as much information as I could, February was when I really started building. So probably the first week of February is when I logged into our employee advocacy platform for the first time and started mapping out what do I want people to be sharing? What are the topics? What are the categories? Which different teams are getting access to this? And what is this going to look like in practice? What are the expectations that I'm setting from the very beginning? What do I want people to do with this tool? And in terms of removing those barriers, most of the best practices that I saw mentioned identifying an executive sponsor from day one. So I had some internal conversations with my supervisors, some of our other marketing leads, and said, who can we pick on C suite who would be a good advocate for employee advocacy? So we went with our head of HR. She was fantastic. She was on board from day one. And we were able to show her that value immediately of being part of a program like this. So she helped us kind of amplify that, hey, everyone, this is coming. And then when we had our sales kickoff, I'd say we started marketing it internally early on. So in December, we kind of started putting out some little sneaky feelers like something really great is coming soon, stay tuned. And then when we had our sales kickoffs in January, we had one in the US and then we had one for our international team as well. Our marketing leads gave a brief presentation of our new tool and said, okay, sales team, you're going to be in on this from day one. Get excited about it. It's coming really soon. So we were able to have kind of our internal campaign of like, all right, priming everybody for this so that when it's live, they know what it is, they know it's coming, and they know how important it is. And then I spent a lot of time with our IT team. I could not have done this without them to set up, make sure that people were able to log in with their single sign on. We use Microsoft for everything. So making it able to log in with SSO and then also setting up a Microsoft Teams integration from day one, that I knew was going to be the easiest way to get people on board if it was a one-click sign-on and a one-click to share.
I think it's really interesting getting all of that structural foundation. It's great that you did that. I've seen so many cases where people have built an advocacy program quite quickly, which is not always a bad thing, but without the scope for the scale. Like as you said, like Aptean's a very large organization and that's complex and has lots of verticals, and
Mhm.
it doesn't take a lot to look at the news, and you go through a lot of acquisitions, and there's a lot of that going on. Building something out that functionally works at a degree of scale from day one is
Mhm.
the thing that I always want to talk to clients about, because it's so easy to go, I'm just going to build this for the sales team. And I'd imagine this might have been a temptation initially to go, we'll just put the sales team in and then it's done. And then we can just go and that's it. But
Mhm.
it only takes, and you've probably seen this, and I'd be interested to know, 3 weeks later, somebody else is going, could I have a little bit of my content in this thing? Have you seen that kind of people come out the woodwork once they start to see it get going?
Absolutely. So we did our beta launch was February 20th. So everything was built for the most part. The foundation was laid. I had made a new SharePoint. I had designed a bunch of SOP, a lot of documentations, and I did kind of a mini training session for everybody in our beta. So of our 30 people, I put them in Teams chat and I said, you are part of an exclusive beta. This is brand new. Give me all of your feedback. Tell me what you like, tell me what you don't like. And then I was able to ask them questions as well to say, hey, we're trying out this feature. What do you think? And yeses or nos, that really helped shape how we would launch the following month. So from there, we had our 30 people and we were having a lot of internal conversations with our beta specifically to make sure we were representing different parts of our global team. So we had some people from sales, we had some people from marketing, a few from HR, and from all different geographies to make sure we were building something that would work for everybody. And then when we launched on March 16th, we had identified here are the main teams that need access based on one, who is most likely to share this content, and two, who is the most likely to gain value, if their audiences would gain value. That's going to be your sales department. Pretty much always, it's going to be your sales department. But I also needed to get our executive leadership team on board and some of our senior marketing leaders. So the thinking was we put out a wide net. It was, I believe, around 680 people that we officially launched to. And the messaging there was, this is phase one. You are part of phase one. We are going to expand this as soon as we can. We need to get as many people active, locked and loaded, and then we're going to grow from here. And in terms of content, that has evolved so quickly just in the 2 months since we launched our beta. But that was always the plan. That was always the intention. We built the foundation. We prioritize, I know from my team and from our leadership team, what are the business priorities for Aptean? That's what we started with. And now we're in a phase where we're kind of opening that up internally. We're calling them Advocacy Champions. So whether it's a specific geography, if it's a translation that's needed, or even if it's product specific, we're pulling them into advocacy as well and saying, okay, as the marketing lead for product A, right? Your sales team has different needs than another sales team does. You can create content specifically for them in advocacy, and you can own that. I will give you the tools and the training to own that. And then we can create more content that has higher value for everybody involved. So it's been, I'd say, part organic of a few folks reaching out and saying, hey, can we post about X? And me saying, yes, absolutely. Here's access. You can post as much as you want, and I'll make sure it looks good before it goes out. And then working with our marketing leaders and some of our senior leadership team to identify those champions that we know support key parts of our business. But that's going to continue to scale as well. We're all in phase one.
Quick one. If you've ever wondered how your employee advocacy efforts are actually performing and not just what you think is happening, Disseminate offers a free employee advocacy health check. All you have to do is provide your company name and our team will pull real social data on how active your employees are, what impact it's having, and then how you stack up against your chosen competitors. So whether you're assessing the performance of your employee advocacy program or getting a benchmark for a future program, these will be the insights you can act on. The link's in the show notes.
I wanted to come on to executive sponsorship because we had an initial chat coming into this recording and you mentioned about the fact you had a exec sponsor for the program. So can you tell us a little bit about that, who it was and why you felt that was important?
Absolutely. So when that, as I was reading in the best practices for how to launch an employee advocacy program, I think because Aptean is such a large organization, I'm based out of our Alpharetta office. Not today, I'm in my home office, but I'm normally in our corporate office, our corporate headquarters. And a lot of people don't know who I am. And I think especially being new to the team starting in July of last year, if they got an email just from me saying, Anna Laura is welcoming you to employee advocacy, I'd say 90% of my colleagues would be like, who is that? Why should I care? Right. So I needed somebody that had name recognition who would also be willing to spare a little bit of their time to help us get this off the ground. So we were having, again, those internal conversations to figure out who should it be, right? Who makes the most sense? Who's the best fit for us to help get this in front of as many people as possible and make it compelling. And early on, with the sales kickoff kind of teasers that some of our senior marketing folks did, that was great. But we needed somebody who could kind of own the executive messaging. We needed somebody in C-suite to throw some weight behind it. So we ended up reaching out to our head of HR. So I sent her a note and said, hey, we're launching something. You've probably heard, some rumblings about it. Would you be willing to grant us a little bit of your time? I'll write everything for you, but would you be willing to help us get this off the ground and help us get the word out? And she said, of course, yeah, I'm totally here for it. So we added her to our beta, and I think within our beta it was a 3-week beta. Within the first week, maybe early into the second, she came to me and said, people are calling me and telling me how good my LinkedIn looks because of the content she was sharing from our advocacy program. So she got it immediately. And that was really valuable to be able to have her, our head of HR, to spread that message. She is also based out of the corporate office with me. So I sent that email to her inviting her to do it. She joined our beta. And then I believe it was a week or so before we did our big launch on March 16th, I drafted some copy for her that said, essentially, hi, colleagues, you've been selected for phase 1 of our new employee advocacy program. You're going to get an email from Anna Laura next week inviting me to it. Please join it. Here are the benefits, kind of the sell for the team to participate. So we had that go out from her the week prior, and then I sent the formal invites to the program on March 16th. And looking back, I maybe would have done one additional email from our executive sponsor, but as of today, so a little over a month since we officially launched, we're up to 500 active users. It has been very, very high touch, but I do think having an executive sponsor, it just adds a little more weight to the program and more credibility in a way, especially at a larger company. It just amps everything up a little bit more.
I think you're right as well with the name recognition. And it is like just the nature of big businesses. If you get an email from somebody who you don't recognize, it doesn't always stand out. When you get an email from the head of HR,
Right.
you're probably opening that email no matter whatever the subject line is, right? So I think that's always a factor.
So at this point, you've had your beta, it's been a success, you've got your team's integrations and everything that you need for the launch. I want to ask you about the launch, but before I go into any of the questions and the specifics, how was it?
Yeah, I think leading up to the launch, it was a lot of long days. It was pretty high stress, but once it launched, it was like this huge weight off of my shoulders, and then seeing how immediately people took it and ran with it, even just in our beta. Our beta was fantastic, and I owe them so much, and how they helped shape the program and advocate for it amongst their teams. So if you're launching an employee advocacy program, you need a beta. Hard stop. And I think that 30 people mark was perfect. Initially, I was only thinking around 10. I think 30 people was great, and it should be intimate. It should be kind of a one-to-one relationship there. But launching to the larger group, I had all of my contacts that I'd worked with IT to help procure. We had identified who needed to be in the program, and pressing send was one of the most defining moments of my career. It had been so much buildup, so much work, and just sending it out to everyone. It's like your child. It's like, okay, be nice to my baby, please, please be nice.
Like first day of
So,
school vibes.
right. I was like, okay, it's been in this bubble for, a month and a half or so of building it, and now it's out, it's available, and if I've done everything right, it's going to go off. So I think on the first day, we had something like 150 people accept their invitations, which was beyond my wildest expectations. And I do think our executive sponsor really helped kind of facilitate some of that because people were familiar already. So we had a great kind of day one sign up. We only had two very, very small technical issues. So there was somebody who was trying to download the app. It wasn't working. He couldn't log in. He had downloaded the wrong app. So that was an easy fix. That was great. And then there was one other like account that needed to just be resent their activation. But in week one, it was smooth sailing. We had a couple people say that they wanted to opt out. That's normal. Something like this kind of program is optional. It's highly encouraged, but we're not going to force you to post anything, especially if you're not active on social or if you don't want to share it. That's okay. We were kind of expecting that from the beginning, but it was very smooth, and I'm really proud of that. Just how much work it was getting up to there. Once I let my baby go, people liked my baby, so that was a nice feeling.
And I know that since that initial launch, you started to consider, so you're talking about adoption rates there. Obviously, you've had a fantastic early adoption to the program, but I know you've started to look at, proving ROI as well. We've spoken about a number of metrics that you're looking at currently. Can you just tell us how you are defining that, or tell the listeners how you're defining that currently and the results that you've seen so far?
We knew early on that, with a program like this, it is a financial investment. We need to be able to show that it's valuable to our company and to our colleagues as well. I reached out to our digital team. I was asking for the metrics, like what does a typical launch look like for an employee advocacy program? What is that baseline? And I read a couple of different case studies from a couple different, software companies that offer advocacy, and they recommended, reach out to your digital team, ask them what their metrics are. How much does it cost to get in front of 1,000 people? So having that number, our tool tells us ROI of earned media value based on, the average cost to get in front of 1,000 people for LinkedIn, Facebook, X, etc. And LinkedIn is our bread and butter. That's where most of our brand content lives. That's where we have the biggest audience. So that's typically what we craft the majority of our posts around, especially for our sales team. They're super active there. So looking at our numbers now, since we launched our beta on February 20th, we have accrued over $357,000 in earned media value. ROI has been insane. Yeah, it was it was evident very, very early on, even just within the first 2 weeks of launch, that we had already surpassed, the cost that it took to get this tool up and running. The ROI has been incredible.
Yeah, and I think for clarity's sake, for people that are listening, what we're looking at here is just paid advertising in a different format, right? It's if you look at your paid ads and you're spending $15 a click on LinkedIn, which is probably for some people would be a dream amount of money to be spending, because some people are spending a lot more than that. It isn't rocket science when you bring on that number of employees and they're reaching out to a very large network of people that are objectively more engaged. You do just get a really, really good ROI off the back of it, because
That's
it
right.
doesn't really cost you anything outside of a platform, which just makes it easier for you more than anything else and simplifies that process and lets you track it. As you said right at the beginning,
Mhm.
people have this going on at the moment, but they just have no idea what the value is to them.
Absolutely. And I think to that point, people buy from people they trust. I can post the most beautiful content on my kind of corporate brand accounts, but that kind of pales in comparison versus a salesperson or someone in marketing that you have an existing relationship with. You already trust them. You have that one-to-one authentic connection. That's why advocacy is so valuable.
Couldn't agree more. And again, just after that earned media value number, just to stress once more, team of one, 2 months. So I think naturally people will be wondering where this goes next. So 2 months into the journey, I'm sure you'll be thinking about scaling. What more can we do with this? After 6 months, after 12 months, but once the foundations are strong and people are engaged, what do you think becomes the next big challenge?
I think the biggest challenge now is how do we maintain this momentum? How do we keep people sharing? And with launching, our internal advocacy champions to support content creation, that's step one. We have to get more content in here. We have to make it compelling for people to log in every week. There's a lot of automated reminders for people to share content, but if they're not seeing content that feels applicable for them to share, we're going to see a drop off. So some of that is expected, but as a perfectionist, I want to do everything I can to prevent that. So really I've led some training sessions both with our advocates. So I've built out an entire SharePoint library of here's how to get started in advocacy in 5 minutes. And there was a recording of the initial training that I did. So those resources are always available, they're evergreen. And as we move into our phase two, opening up that wait list company wide to say, okay, we have our core 500. That was my end of year goal, was to get 500 engaged employees who had signed up for their account. We hit it 2 months in, actually a month in from our official launch date. So I need a bigger BHAG. But keeping that in mind, I need to keep making this valuable for people. I need to find the right people to support the content as a team of one. I can give them the tools, I can teach them how to fish, but they know their teams better than I ever will. So putting that trust in them to continue expanding this, especially before we open it up to that larger company-wide, okay, if you want in, here you go, here are the benefits of it, is really just maintaining a high level of content quality and quantity.
I've launched a lot of advocacy programs over the years, and I think they all have the similar trend in that beginning period. And I always refer to it as just like it's the hockey stick curve. So you'll start with a little bit of a high, and it will degrade. Where, as you say, people are going to join this thing and go, not what I thought it was, actually not for me, I don't want to use it anymore, and that's okay. It's the sort of now period, 2 months in, that you will see that's when the continual growth just keeps happening, and it's okay to have that little peak and trough at the beginning for it to then kind of grow later on. And that's where, as you've said, the outlook of 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, like what does it look like then? That's what you're really looking towards at that point. So don't worry with the two Q2 numbers quite so much, because they are a small part of a very big story, I would say.
Absolutely. I'd say my eventual goal is to get this into the hands of all employees who work at Aptean. I want it to be part of their onboarding when they first join. I want them to be in advocacy from day one. We're just not there yet. That's probably phase 4, this plan, but we'll get there. It'll keep scaling. That's how it was built.
Well, with the approach so far, Anna Laura, you mentioned about the fact that you were watching LinkedIn and looking at people who you knew were already posting. You knew they were capable of putting good posts together. And obviously since then you've expanded beyond that, but there will be the cliche one here is always engineers or devs within a business. They might not be the most active on LinkedIn. They might not think so much about putting LinkedIn posts together. And what I'm alluding to here, or what I'm going to come on to, is AI. And obviously it wouldn't be a podcast in this day and age if we weren't talking about AI, quite frankly. But we know, obviously, from a personalization standpoint and from a content creation standpoint, even from your side, it can be a fantastic lever to pull to help you curate more content and for them to share more, because they can use it to customize their own content to better suit their tone of voice. So it's a very long-winded way of teeing up the question. Are you using generative AI currently with your program?
Yes, we are. So as part of just working at Aptean, they have a lot of really great training sessions. So I've done a few different workshops for agent building. And when I first joined Aptean, I had never built an agent in my life. And being able to have, our AI pros internally teach us step by step, how do we use our software? How do we use App Central and Intelligence Studio to build agents? That really gave me the framework to say, I could use this for employee advocacy. Because again, as a team of one, scaling that content is so incredibly hard, regardless of what kind of social you're doing. And then adding advocacy on top of that, it's a lot. It's really intense. So using what I learned in those workshops, I was able to build out, I have a couple different versions of them, but my employee advocacy agent that I use is it follows brand guidelines, it follows social media best practices. So I was able to take what I know about working in social for 10 years, feed it into an agent, and then pull in, do this for the brand, do this for the specific platform, and tell it what I want that output to look like. So within my agent, it always gives me 3 different options, which is recommended, to give some variety for employee advocacy. So my first one is a little bit shorter. It can be used for LinkedIn or Twitter/X. And then the bottom 2 are a little bit longer. They're LinkedIn focused. One's in first person, one's in third person. And that's where it can bring in a little more of that personality and, me looking at what does a good social post look like if it's coming from someone in sales or someone in marketing? How do I make it feel human and not like ChatGPT wrote it? That's what we're trying to avoid. We don't want that. As I've built out these agents, I've tried to make them feel like a colleague is talking to you. And that's what I say to people if they're hesitant to post on LinkedIn. What would you say to your coworker? If your coworker or your friend came up to you and said, "Hey, what are you working on?" This is what you tell them. So when it comes to someone like an engineer, someone in R&D, someone in product development, a lot of what I'm curating content for in advocacy is what they're actually working on in their day-to-day. So there's a level of pride that they want to be sharing that information. They just don't know how to do it. So having a tool like advocacy that gives them, kind of some pre-crafted copy to share, and they can personalize it if they want to, if they want to run it through their own AI agents or AI tools. They can tweak it, they can make it sound more like them, but they have that foundation. It removes that barrier. And I've seen in my program, again, light stalking on LinkedIn, it's part of the job. Uh, I've seen people who had 0 LinkedIn presence before joining the employee advocacy program, and now they're posting a couple times a week. Their posts are getting great engagement. You went from having no posts ever to here's 3 posts a week that are on brand, that have a conversational tone, and that talk about the work you actually care about. And my favorite thing to see is when people take, of the 3 prompts that I give them to share, and they do go in and edit them and make it their own. I think that's the best use of advocacy, where I'm giving you something that is high quality, it's on brand, but you're the one, my advocates are the ones making it sound like them. That's what's going to resonate more with their network every time.
It's definitely something that we hear and that we've seen time and again. It's always easier to get people to add their own tone of voice to something when you give them a starting point. It's that blank page syndrome that's so hard to get over, I think. I think when you can see a LinkedIn post that's been structured in a way, you can see the clear intro, key takeaway, and maybe a call to action or whatever it might be, then it's just a case of, changing maybe a sentence here or there, or just maybe even tweaking a few words, or in Elliot's case, probably an emoji, because I know he doesn't particularly like them. That said, Anna Laura, I'm so excited to see where this goes next. I think we could probably have you on the podcast in another 6 months. Forget a year. I think in 6 months' time, it's going to be much bigger than it is now. But I want to say well done. Genuinely, what you've achieved is no small feat. And I think if anybody can take anything from this, it's have a plan going into it, work backwards from it, and just execute all those small tasks, break it down into little bite-sized bits, tick them off as you go, day by day, week by week, and before you know it, you'll have a successful launch and something you can scale. So Anna Laura, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me.
And thanks everyone for listening. We'll catch you in a week's time. Bye-bye.